Welcome to the Barrel Chat podcast, where we provide an unfiltered look into the craft beer industry from the untrained palates of two dumbass outsiders. I am Matthew Muncie, and I'm once again flying solo on this beautiful Friday. Dustin's he's not here. He's not at my house. I'm sitting in a closet right now recording this. We are trying to work on ways to get him onto these Friday 4-packs here in the near future, so hopefully we can get that done, but you're all stuck with me for one more week at least. And before we jump into this week's 4-pack, I want to let you all know you can follow us on Instagram. We are at Barrel Chat, and we just added a few new things to the Linktree link in our bio. One, we've opened up the Google Calendar that we have for Barrel Chat, and the goal with that is we're going to start adding all brewery events that we can find or that people tell us about, and that's throughout the state of Indiana. And maybe we'll start adding in, ones that are in neighboring states. And then we also want to do like limited specialty beer releases. I don't know how many of those still take place versus just kind of here's a weekly release, but that's kind of the idea, is maybe we can start adding some of that just to kind of get the word out there. That's a big part of why we do this show, is to help spread the word of the Indiana beer scene and just the craft beer scene in general, as you've kind of seen over the first, what are we at, like 13, 14 episodes now. We like to talk about just basically all craft beer and kind of push the good word out there. The second thing we have is a donation button, a tip jar, I think is a better phrase for it. And it runs through PayPal. Basically, if you want to leave us a tip, donate to the show, the goal is to just use that money for the beer that we buy for the show. Potentially, if it gets even bigger, we would like to, add a few more mics, do stuff like that. It does seem like we're going to get back into the interviewing that we used to do. We've had a lot of people, one, ask if we were going to do it listener-wise, and then two, we've had a few people want to come on the show and talk to us, which slightly different than the last time we did this. So I think that's going to be in our future as well, and we're going to keep with the same weekly beer review formula, because I do enjoy that. I do enjoy not being completely smashed after one of these podcasts. So those are the two new things that you can find. You can still find all the links to the podcast apps in case you're looking for that. And then we have our Instagram on there, which kind of defeats the purpose, but it is what it is. If you do love this podcast, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. It doesn't have to be 5-star if you think it's a little bit less than that. That feedback does help us improve. Obviously, if it's 5-star, this is great. We can't improve on that. But if you do feel like there is a problem with this show, or something we're not doing right, or maybe something we're not hitting properly, if you got some creative criticism, we'd be glad to hear it. You can DM us on Instagram. You can email us at barrelchatpodcast@gmail.com. We've had it, and we've made some changes to a few things in the past. So, we're open to it if there's something we can improve on. And leaving those ratings do actually help us reach more listeners. We start showing up in lists, or like recommended podcasts, like, hey, you've been listening to this beer podcast, maybe you want to listen to this other one. That's how all those like algorithms kind of work. Lastly, we also love to hear from you. If there's a particular beer that you think we should review on one of our episodes, just shoot us a DM on Instagram or send us an email, barrelchatpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know, then we can get out there and try and find it and review it and see what happens. If this is your first time listening to the Friday 4-pack, this show consists of 4 different topics: what we've been drinking, 2 news stories, and then what's happening around the Indiana beer world over the next, few weeks, couple months, stuff like that. Basically just trying to touch upon any events, beer releases, stuff like that may be coming up here soon. Just so that way people know. All right, let's break down this first topic, what we've been drinking. This is just kind of me, but last Friday was National Beer Day, and it happened to be Good Friday, so I had the day off, which was just perfect timing. So I did some brewery hopping, only hit up 2, but to me that was hopping around because I went first to the north side, met up with Dustin at Daredevil Hall. So that's Daredevil Brewing's tap room, which is located on 86th Street in that Ironworks section. I don't really know what to call that, but it's literally right next door to the Ironworks Hotel. So we dropped in there for a little bit to eat, basically lunchtime, and to grab a beer. The beer list was basically just the hits, just the Daredevil hits. If you know what a Daredevil hit is, it was on that list. They didn't really seem to have anything outside of that. I know that they do sometimes like their experimental IPAs and stuff. I didn't see anything there, and their entire outsider tap list was gone. They were waiting on redoing that. They had all the kegs, they just hadn't changed them out. So we just kind of had to pick what Daredevil had, and I was kind of feeling a vacation Kolsch at that point. I wanted something light, crisp. Didn't really want to start with the IPAs quite yet, so that's what I went with. And I'm sure everyone is going to be surprised to hear that it's still great. It's Daredevil's Kolsch. Like, it won awards and everything, I'm pretty sure. So none of this is surprising to anyone. It's still good. It's still really good. From there, I ran down to Fountain Square Brewing. I hit up Fountain Square for a completely separate reason, but since I was going to Fountain Square, I wanted to hit up the brewery because, one, they just, changed ownership. They became a sort of employee-owned brewery now. I know it's like employee/investors and stuff like that, but it's people who actually want to run a brewery who own the thing now. And I wanted to kind of see what had changed. And you walk in and nothing's really changed. They were changing out the draft wall, and the bartender had kind of told us what it was supposed to be. I had a hard time visualizing it in my head, but they were all pretty excited about it, and it was supposed to be going in like later in the week or something like that. But they were pretty excited about what it was going to look like. So at this point, they were just kind of, they were doing it just beer festival style, and they had things running out of coolers and stuff. But I did try one of their beers. It was the Preacher's Daughter. It was like Preacher's Nutty Mama or something like that. And it was like Preacher's Daughter, which is their amber ale, and it had like hazelnut in it or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was pretty decent. It was kind of just like a nuttier version of Preacher's Daughter, which I enjoy. And so I thought it was pretty good. I had just a sample of that. And the full pint, I went with Count Nebula. Oh, I love this beer. This is one of my favorite just milk stouts in this state. And it's a 6% ABV chocolate milk stout. That beer still bangs, people. I love that beer. It still holds up. I really wish I could find that beer just for sale places. But it is what it is. Just means I have to start going down there more and start frequenting the place. And I am actually excited to get back into that brewery. The beer is still good. I just think that, they just got to build that base, and I think this will be a good place to start with the new ownership and the people who actually really do love running a brewery. The main reason I went to Fountain Square had nothing to do with beer, had everything to do with food. And I did tell you I was going to shout out some restaurants and stuff that I go to. This is the one I've been hooked on now for almost a year, and it is called World Famous Hot Boys. They are right next to Siam Square. If you know anything about Fountain Square and remember where Pepe's Grill used to be, that's where they are at. Hands down, best chicken sandwich in the state. Probably the best chicken sandwich in this country. If you've not been there, I highly suggest going there. It's kind of like, it's like a Nashville hot chicken. Like, it's just all seasoning and then oil. There's no sauce base. I don't know what it is or how they do it or what makes it different, but I've had a few varieties of these kind of sandwiches from other locations, and just nothing hits like the Hot Boys chicken does. I do not understand it, but I love it. And I've been there. Been there like 4 times in less than 30 days because I'm sort of addicted to it. Not great health wise, but hey, it is what it is. one thing I do like is that they do serve beer, and they have a basically a full bar, and a good chunk of that beer is also Indiana beer. So like they had Zombie Dust on tap. They got a bunch of cans of Sun King. They even have like a bubbles out of whatever Rheingeist, I think is what it's called. That definitely a place that everyone should go. And then for at-home beers, really the only new one I drank, I finished off the Zombie Dust I had. Beer was really good. And I had a few other beers that we've already had on the show that, we buy 4 and 6 packs of to do, and then we just got to finish those off. But I had a Metazoa's Puppy Slumber Party, and this is their 6.4% peanut butter milk stout. It was okay. I feel like this beer used to be better. And maybe I'm just wrong, and maybe I'm just misremembering, but I really do feel like this beer used to be really solid. Now, with that said, this could be one of those situations where bad can, bad batch, whatever it may be. The problem I had with this one, it was a 4-pack that I got at Meijer. The beer's pretty thin, so it's been a long time since I've had this beer. And so I don't know if things have changed. I don't know if the recipe's changed, the brewery, the brewer or anything like that. But the beer was super thin for what I expect a milk stout to be, just a stout in general. And then it wasn't there was hardly any carbonation. Like you poured it, the head immediately disappeared, and it tasted flat. So again, not sure if it's a recipe change or just a bad batch or what it may be. I will say I've had a lot of bad experiences with cans since I started drinking again in 2022. This is probably at least the 4th or 5th time that I've bought beer off shelves, including one time at a brewery, sadly, that the beers have just been super undercarbonated. And in one aspect, there was no carbonation at all. So I don't know if this is all because of the, CO2 shortages and stuff like that, or kind of what's happening. But it does suck because, sometimes that's $15 just right down the drain. And, it's not fun to really drink those because it just doesn't have the same taste and mouthfeel that you really want. All right, topic number 2, we're going to jump into the news. And this first one, just combining two things I love, sports and beer. MLB, certain teams, right now I think it's listed as 4, and this is probably going to start changing, but they have started to extend beer sales into the 8th inning. So normally they would do it, they call it at the 7th inning stretch, and this was their way to make sure that, people weren't getting too intoxicated, and that gave you enough time to maybe, sober up a little bit over the last 2 innings or so. So that way people weren't driving drunk and stuff like that. However, since the pitch clock came into play this year, they are seeing games go much quicker. So I got this all from the New York Post. They said the average game was 3 hours and 11 minutes at the beginning of last season. And right now games are averaging 2 hours and 38 minutes. So that's about 30 minutes shorter, I think, if I did my math right. So that's a good amount of time. And so you want to be able to extend those beer sales so that way you're kind of making up for any lost revenue there. Right now it's the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Texas Rangers, the Milwaukee Brewers, because of course, and the Minnesota Twins, who have all extended it into the 8th inning. So I will be kind of curious to see as the year goes on, like, how many other teams pick up on this, and do we start to see an actual increase in beer sales in the stadiums, or are the sales going to remain the same because you still have you're still there for basically the same amount of time? Because you figure that last 30 minutes, that's that could be considered the last 2 innings of a normal game, potentially, or if the game's going into extra innings and stuff, it's a long time that you can't sell beer. This I just thought was kind of fascinating when worlds like this kind of collide of, people already want to be able to buy beer throughout a game longer anyways. So now we're just kind of venturing into that. And, at what point do we just see this become the norm, even if maybe games start to inch up a little bit closer? Like, if we gain another 10, 15 minutes of average game time, like, are we going to see people reverse and go back after you've already made that call to go into the 8th, and now you've already set that expectation? It'd be interesting to just see the dichotomy of how the stadiums and the MLB teams really play this one through for the season. Because right now they're calling it an experiment, which is a good way to do it, because then if you can just say, this experiment didn't work, and we're not seeing an increase in beer sales, or by the time the 8th inning hits, we're not really seeing a loss either, so we don't need to do it. I don't really know what maybe like legal ramifications they have if somebody leaves there drunk or not, but pretty sure you could get pretty wasted pretty quick if you wanted to, especially at some of these where you can bring in outside coolers and stuff and sit in the outfield, like at the Indians game. I mean, can't be that hard to sneak in liquor and stuff. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. Topic number 3 is our second news article. I pulled this one from Reuters. I'm going to be honest with you people, I couldn't really find much in the way of like good, fascinating news. Nothing's as good as the Bud Light backlash, but I really didn't want to talk about it this week. Maybe we'll come back to that next week, because I did see there was some more stupidity with that. But this I thought was cool just because it also blends together two things I really enjoy, and that's technology and beer. And so a Spanish startup company, Econoco, I'm probably pronouncing that horribly wrong, Ekonoke. They are growing hops inside of warehouses outside of Madrid with the hope of future-proofing the supply of hops. And so basically this is what you hear people refer to as like vertical farming, stuff like that, where that's more like high-rise, but like you're growing stuff inside. You want to have different floors, and you're able to kind of do all this. And they're doing it with hydroponics, which is, growing it without soil and everything else. You kind of remove some of the negative things that come with the soil, like all the bugs and stuff like that. And they use some kind of water solution. I tried to look up what hydroponics were, and it's like I understand it just enough to know I don't understand it. It sounds fascinating, to be honest, but it sounds like just a massive amount of work to make something grow. So this is interesting just because, a lot of people try this with like, food, and the idea of like trying to get something sustainable. You can reclaim farmland. We're starting to see a lot of droughts. Think about like California and stuff. They're always on fire. There's always a drought. How is stuff growing out there? There, in this Reuters article, it says this is important, as according to growers associations, U.S. production of hops was down 12% year on year in 2022, while German output saw a 21% decline, and Czech yields fell by more than 40% due to abnormally hot and dry growing conditions. We're seeing that in the U.S. as well, obviously, but like, that's, for us, it's easier to kind of see it. Like, I mean, you look outside in Indiana, and, in one day you could go through all 4 seasons. So when you have all these crops and stuff that, especially with hops, they have to hit very specific conditions. They have to be grown in specific ways to get the essential oils and alpha acids and stuff like that, because that's what's giving it that bitter and fruity aroma and stuff like that. You have to grow those in certain ways, and that's why things grown in Indiana versus things grown in like Washington State are going to taste different. The soil is different. So this could be a way to, even in that regard, maybe, I don't know, I'm just thinking this off the top of my head, but maybe you get flavor profiles that start to be a little bit more consistent too, because you're not having to grow them in different kinds of soil. But I find this just to be very interesting, because obviously we are seeing a global issue with not just the hops, obviously, but with food in general. So if people can start putting money into ways of trying to figure out this kind of vertical farming where we're doing it inside, and the biggest drawback is obviously the energy cost, because you're not using the sun. You're having to use, lights and stuff like that. So you're having to draw that energy from somewhere. So if more places can get more renewable energy, of some kind, through the sun, through wind, through things like that, that then are able to power all these systems indoors. I mean, that's where you start to see a lot of just savings in general of the earth, global warming and climate change and, whatever the buzzwords are nowadays. That's part of this. And you also need to drive those costs down, because if your energy costs are high, that means the development of these hops are high. So you have to charge a higher price. Well, that doesn't really work for all the craft brewers and stuff. And, the big boys can pay those kind of prices if they really want to, if they want to gobble up the entire supply. But, it's hard to do that outside of, buying it for a one-off beer and see how it goes and stuff like that. But, once they're able to get the energy costs down and everything else and get these hops, A, you need more hops to grow, but then B, you can be competitive in pricing with normal farmers. I think it's a world where they can both live, because I do feel like there's always just going to be a natural taste difference between soil and something like this. Topic number 4 is around Indiana. I don't have a lot here. I didn't see much on the Instagram, and this is kind of where I'm hoping some people might kind of help us out by just letting us know, especially breweries out there. If you want to get added to this list and obviously added to the calendar, simply just reach out, let us know what's going on so we can tell everybody about it. But the big ones I have here, once again, Taxman's Death and Taxes. That's next Saturday from 12 to 4. I saw tickets are still on sale. A Taproom is celebrating their 2-year anniversary, also next Saturday. The event's called A Fest. That's from 12 to 5. It does look like the tickets are all sold out based on what I saw. So I don't know. You might be able to hit them up and just kind of double check or something. But it does look like maybe that one is sold out, which is pretty cool. And then we saw that Connor Prairie announced History on tap. And Dustin and I are thinking about going to this because I'm a big history buff. I do like Connor Prairie, and obviously you throw in some beer, and it looked like they were doing stuff like showing how people made beer, like the 1600s and stuff. That just fascinates me. That's going to take place on June 2nd. So next Thursday on April 20th, Sun King Fishers is hosting the Horizon Council, who I think is like setting this event. I think they're part of Connor Prairie in some fashion, for a special Firkin Tappin' party. And they're going to be tapping a brand new beer called Coming Down in Paris, which is a peanut butter chocolate banana beer. That sounds fantastic. I want to go try this, so I'm hoping I can get out to Sun King next Thursday. But those Connor Prairie tickets are on sale. It looked like they were like $60 for general admission and $80 for VIP, and VIP made it look like you get like a little lounge area that you can go hide away in. So kind of pricey. It did say that if you bought tickets at this event at Sun King next week, I think you save like $10 per ticket. So drops it down to 50. But I mean, it's hard to say it's bad when it's actually going to a good cause, which is Connor Prairie. I think I do believe they're a good cause. So that is all I have for that one. But I do want to make one note here, rounding out this show. We have our first episode correction. And I'm going to try and add these anytime we get an episode correction from a brewery. Try and make sure that we add them to this show so that way people can hear it. But we just posted our Windmill Brewing show on Wednesday. That was the Dememegorgon Memescake. And as you've probably heard us rant and rave that they did not put on that can that it contains lactose. And we're kind of like, what is up with this? Like, we know this is a thing in the beer industry from time to time, but this kind of seemed like, what are we doing? And so one of their sales reps reached out to us and said, hey, here's why this was missing. So first off, they do add it. He showed us a few of their other lactose beer can labels, and it does clearly say lactose along with all the other ingredients like imperial pastry stout with cinnamon, chocolate, whatever, and lactose. So it's like, okay, this doesn't seem to be like a blatant disregard for this. They mentioned that they had an equipment issue. Like they were brewing this beer and they were going to brew the base beer, and then there was equipment issues. So the base beer couldn't get brewed. but they happened to have, the base beer with lactose that they were going to use for something else sitting idly by. And so they decided to use that as the base beer for this. However, they had already made all the labels and stuff like that. And as anyone's going to know, you can't just magically reprint thousands of labels and get them in there, right when you need them. And it sounds like just a bad production time, and they had to make a call, and this is what they did. Does it suck? Yes. I don't know how you fix that outside of like you delayed a beer and rebuy the labels or something, but I get it. It sucks. You tried to put it out there at least on Untapped and stuff that, hey, this is a lactose beer. And I'm sure when they released it, they probably put that in there as well, like on social media posts. And it's just stuff that we never saw. But, it does suck that something with lactose does get sent out without any verbiage on a can whatsoever. Okay, that's we're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt with this one. That's the way I see it. When you see mistakes and stuff, you try and give a benefit of doubt. If you continue to see the same mistake, then it's what they want to do, and it's not just a mistake at that point. So that's going to do it for today's Friday 4-pack. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. It's supposed to be nice and sunny here in Indiana. Get out there, get some beer, and let us know what you're drinking this weekend. Cheers.